Alrighty, foundation paper piecing. So right now we're gonna do the foundation A block, this small one. So you'll have this printed on your foundation paper, and you just wanna rough cut it out. And this is for the regular. For this freezer paper, we do something a little different. So I will not talk about freezer paper at all. So you have your pattern. We work from the back for the most part, okay? You sew on the front and place your fabric on the back. Always remember that, because if you don't, you will for some of these, you will have a mirrored, you'll have it the wrong way, going the wrong direction. So hopefully you will have labeled your pieces according to what the cutting instructions say. For this one, since it's foundation A, we're going to start with the A1 piece. We always go chronological with foundation paper piecing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and each one of these areas indicates that's a piece of fabric that goes on top. So we'll start, remember we put the fabric on the back. We'll take an A1 piece. Now this, oh yeah, it is. We're brown. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you'll want, on the first piece, you always do the right side up. Every one after that, right sides together, so the right side will go down. So you'll first place your A1 on top of the A1 piece, and you want to make sure that it is completely covered. This paper is kind of hard to see through. You can get paper that you can totally see through it and make sure that the fabric completely covers that space. The next thing we're going to do is take the next piece, which is a number 2. So this is a background. So we want A2 of the background. And that one is going to be one of these. Mm-hmm. And remember, we put right side down on this one. And how we're going to line this up is, you'll see this line between 1 and 2, and we're going to line this up, the 2 piece, right side down, about 1/4 of an inch, oops, wrong way, past that 1, 2 line. And again, it's a little hard to tell because you can't see through this paper very well, but a line, that's a good idea. Sometimes we will cut it too, and I'll show you how to do the cutting. So I'm pretty much where I need to be on this. So I'm going to take it over to my cutting board. Take a piece of cardboard. We now have the pattern up. We're going to place the cardboard on the 1, 2 line. Always make sure when you're placing your cardboard that the cardboard itself covers the lower number. Okay, so if you're cutting a 4, 5 line, the cardboard will go over the 4, and you'll be able to see the 5. Once you have the cardboard set, flip the pattern, and only the pattern, not the fabric. Flip it over. Take your add 1/4 ruler, line it up so that it's flush with the cardboard, and then trim this off. Trim off the fabric. Please remember to put your add 1/4 ruler on. If you don't, you will cut exactly where you need to sew, and you have to start over. Okay? So now we can see right where we're going to sew. I'm going to move this down just a bit. I think it's easily going to cover this space, this 2 space, but I just want to be sure. Once it's placed, you're going to flip it over, and now we're going to sew on the 1, 2 line. I like to start beyond the edge of the actual sew line. When you look at these, the outer line is where you're going to eventually cut. The inner line is your sew line, and what's in between is your seam allowance. So I start in the seam allowance. I'm going to put my stitch length to about 1.5. You want it pretty small stitches. And now you're just gonna sew right on top of that line. And if you need to go slow to make sure you're on that line, that's fine. And I'm gonna go beyond that line, cut it, and our first one's done. Now you go to the ironing place. You're gonna finger press it open. This is important to finger press it because you wanna make sure you have it as open as possible without ironing the holy hell out of it. So just press it down, and now we're ready to go to the next piece. Next step, flip it back over. Now we're gonna find our 1-3 line because we're going chronological. Place your cardboard on that line, covering number 1. Pull it open. Okay, so see where I've sewn across here? That's fine. You can just kind of pull it, pull those stitches. Place your add a quarter, trim it off. The reason we do this is so now we know exactly where to place our, what happened here? Our next piece. So the next piece, we look on here, it's number 3. It's a background, so we look for A3 on our pile, which happens to be here. Flip it back to the back, right side down, and you're gonna place your number 3 piece along the where you just cut. Now, kind of hard to see, but when you are placing your next piece, you don't necessarily want to center it where you cut. What you want, how you want to place it, you want to pay attention to where that next space is to make sure this piece is going to cover it. And the way you can do that is just line it up, flip it over, and just kind of eyeball it. If you have it too far down and flip it over, this one, I mean, you're barely going to cover it. So always make sure you do that, because that will be very sad if you don't. Right. Okay, so this is not centered on what I just cut, but it is centered on the actual space. So I'm gonna go back to my machine, flip it back over, and sew right on that line. Now I'll take you through this entire, because this is a pretty quick section. I'll take you through this whole thing so we can just start to finish. So we're going to finger press it open, press it down. Every now and then, well, no, I wouldn't say every now and then. I would say after every single piece you put, flip it over, make sure it is covering the space it's supposed to cover. Because if it's not, you'll need to take it off and do it again. All right, next one is our 1 and 4. Chronological order, placing it over the 1. Pull that out, that's okay. Place your add a quarter, trim it off. Okay, now I want my A4 piece. So I'm going to place it on here, right sides down, right along that edge, but I want to also make sure I'm going to cover that little spot. I will tell you though, the cutting sizes are generous, so most of the times you're going to be able to cover it as long as it's placed along the line the way you need it. Now we're going to flip it, finger press, press. Okay, our last one is the 1-5 line. Line that up. I forgot to check on the back. That tore the paper a little bit, but I feel pretty comfortable, but I will check it before I move on. Made me a little nervous. See how this dips in right there? Mm-hmm. That's pretty darn close to the sew line. So I want to be sure when I flip it back over that it's covered it, and it has, so I'm good, but it just was a little close. Okay, My last piece is A5. Now this has a really pretty thing here. I might try to work with that a little bit to make sure that gets in that piece. If I had put it this way, it probably wouldn't have gotten in there, just barely. So I'm gonna flip it this way. Is that okay? And make sure that's right dead in there. So you do wanna pay attention to your fabrics too, if that's part of what your fabric's doing. Now we're going to sew on the 1-5 line. Finger press it. Press it down. And now we have got all of our pieces in. Last step, turn it over. You can hold it up to the light and make sure there's fabric completely covering that whole block, including the outside line. If it doesn't quite get to the outside line, but is over the inside line, that's okay, because you're eventually going to sew on that inside line. Now I'm going to trim it. Now be careful with this, because you want to be as accurate as possible trimming on the outside line, because when you start to put these pieces with the other pieces, they will come together nicely and you'll get your points correct and you'll get your sides correct if they're all cut accurately. You may even want to use a regular ruler and not your add a quarter to do this. So I will try here. If I think I'm going to be inaccurate, I'm not going to do it, so I don't want to mess it up. But so I'm going to just line up my ruler right on that line, the outside line. Don't do the inside. You have to do it over. And I'm going to trim that off. A little short. Sorry, Allison. Make this one a little bigger this time. I'm going to do it so I can barely see the line itself. It's probably better on this one. Nope, that way. Don't want to see the line. Maybe on the inside I want to see the line a little bit. Okay. That was better. That's right on the line. Okay. And the beauty of foundation paper piecing is once you do all this, your pieces will come together really nicely, and you won't even really have to pay attention to, are you hitting the points, you know, lining it up. Okay, there you go. First piece done.
Wow.
Okay?
Pretty.